Hi everyone, I'm Joe from Installer and welcome to the third of our Drayton Installer Forums. Let's introduce you to our expert panel today. We'll kick off with Rhiannon. Rhiannon, could you tell us a bit about yourself and your kind of role and your background, please?
Hi, my name's Rhiannon. I am based in North Devon. I work for a small family-based installers. We do heat pumps and solar panels. I've learnt on the job. It's been a roller coaster, and I just am loving being in the industry and absorbing everything I can.
Nice, thank you. Next up, we've got 𝗵𝗲𝘁𝗶𝗴. 𝗵𝗲, can you tell us a bit about the work that you do, please?
Yeah, so I run the Heating Academy here in Northampton, and I try and do the best I can to enlighten installers that want to be enlightened onto flow, velocity, and headers and pumps, maps, radiator sizing, heating, all that sort of stuff, just to give them a clue as to how it all works, to give them an insight. Not always 100% successful, but what it definitely does do, it enables people to understand what they don't know, so they can then go and look at, do a bit more research. Some people pick it all up in a couple of days, but either way, idea of what's out there to be learned if you're going to try and do these jobs properly, especially if we move into heat pumps.
Next up, we'll go to Richard Burrows. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your the role that you do at Mid-Wales Plumbing and Heating Supplies, please?
We got that. Yeah, I'm Richard Burrows. I'm the director at Mid-Wales Plumbing and Heating Supplies. We supply all the bits and pieces you need for all the open sort of boilers on the market. So we supply Alpha, Intergas and Viessmann boilers, and all the components that make them clever. So with priority hot water, all the weather comp sensors, all the right bits and pieces that you need for the boilers. And we also supply all the bits and pieces that you need to do advanced heating systems with, like low loss headers, pump groups, and all the bits and pieces that go with it. And that's me.
Perfect. And then we've got Ryan Mills. Ryan, can you tell us a little bit about your where you work up in Edinburgh, please?
Yeah, so 17 years working up here now with my dad, partner in the business, although technically the guy running it all now is my dad's not retired yet, but he's as good as there. Business will be 40 years old come April. Predominantly, we're just doing gas central heating now. We're doing bathrooms, everything, but we're pretty much now just fully on the heating. Vaillant installers. Dad's been Vaillant for near enough 40 years. I've been 17. Like I say, predominantly gas, but it was just involved in our first hybrid system with a heat pump. A few weeks back now. But yeah.
How did that go?
Well, we weren't involved in the heat pump side of it, but the old Keston boiler wasn't working with it, and the company who done the job don't do gas, so we were drafted in to do the gas side of it. But all I can say is the pipe work running through this house, if this was correct, it was ghastly. And yeah, I'm sure it cost a few quid, and certainly my wife would never sign off on the way this looked.
It's interesting. Did it give you a bit of a bug for the heat pumps at all, or opposite?
Not really. The plant room bit, yeah, but the bit inside the house, seeing what was going on, I thought this would just be a headache if this is what it's to look like, because 99% of my customers would kick off. So this guy's obviously just doesn't care how it looks.
What was it, Ryan? Was it like big pipe work, ugly, not hidden, messy?
So it wasn't well hidden, but probably would have been difficult. Some of it, well, a lot of it was 1.25 inches. There was bits 1.5 inches kicking about. Everything was surface. You imagine running, say, 1.25 inches, flow and return straight through high level across the ceiling. It didn't look great at all. The radiators, like I said, I've not been involved in this, but the downstairs toilet, tiny thing, I think I had a 14 triple panel thing. It was just like, what is going on in here? Just everything just looked a bit. Don't get me wrong, the house is like 250-year-old, period listed building, not allowed to change the windows, all of this, but it was a bit like, really? Yeah, just seemed a bit bonkers. Anyway, I'll share the video of a wee bit I got in the house, but I couldn't just go around filming the whole house. I've got a wee bit on my phone.
Oh, no, that's good. I'm interested to see that. Okay, let's kick off into kind of the questions that we've got here. So we've done, this is the kind of third one that we've done. We've covered a range of things across all of the year. This year, and especially last year, have gone a bit mad for legislation. So there's loads of things keep coming in, new governments keep coming in, new prime ministers keep coming in, coming back again. So as kind of installers, how do you guys keep up with the latest kind of legislation changes and how it affects your work? Should we go to Rhiannon first?
Yeah, it's a bit of a minefield, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of time that you've got to spend keeping up to date with stuff, I know I don't. I feel like I don't have enough time. We kind of rely on a bit of a network. We're in North Devon, so there's getting more installers now, but there aren't really that many. So there are like 3 main companies, groups that have been doing it long enough to have like a bit of a good sort of footing in the industry. So we have got a really good relationship with one of the larger ones, Southwest Heat Pumps. And, if we read something, we tell them, I speak to those guys on the phone just all the time. We're always, and actually it's a really good and important part of keeping up to date with that stuff. Because if we read something, we tell them. If they've read something, they tell us, have you seen this last bit? Did you listen to whatever happened on the news? I mean, sort of, rumours in sort of people worrying about what was going to happen in the autumn budget with the bus scheme and things like that. We were all keeping our eyes on that and being aware of what was happening. But basically, we try to keep up. We try to read everything, and talking to other people who are in the industry is like really key so you don't miss anything.
Yeah, when you say reading, is it social media, online stuff, trade mags? Is it like, broadsheets like national newspapers, or is it just a mix of kind of everything?
I don't tend to read the newspapers. I try. Social media is just so immediate. It's just in your hand, isn't it? I mean, it's just, to find the time to do it, the odds that you can sit down and search out and read a whole article they get harder and harder to find. I find it, if you're in the office, a phone's ringing, you're out on survey, all that, it's too much going on in the day. And actually I find like I do a lot of the reading, after work hours, which you don't get paid to do.
But it's important to keep up, I suppose. 𝗵𝗲, what about you? Because you kind of teach this and help engineers like on this kind of low temp heat pump journey. Obviously, if things are changing almost fortnightly, how do you kind of stay ahead to make sure that the information you're giving out is up to date?
Well, I think the best example I've got of the fog of war, if that's what the 𝗫𝗏 regs are, is how you specify a boiler. They've come with these very ambiguous comments. I mean, it's, mustn't be too big, mustn't be too small, mustn't be too ugly, mustn't be too pretty, shouldn't be the wrong colour, needs to fit nicely. No technical spec there, and there's no figures to base anything on. And you look at some of the boilers that are out there, some of the new boilers that have just been launched that clearly don't comply to any of this. And if you write to the manufacturer and say, hey, this is a job that I'm quoting on, it's, I don't know, 5 kilowatt house, and I've got this particular boiler. Can you just confirm for me, please, that this boiler will comply if I put it into this house? And you just won't get an answer. And I've written to my local building control with the same thing. You don't get an answer from them because there isn't an answer. Nobody knows. And I think these regulations have deliberately been written so vague, not so much that you can't say that it does comply, but that you can say, sorry, actually say it doesn't comply, but you can't argue that it doesn't comply either. And so you can still fit these boilers that are, really way too big, aren't very good at all for small properties. And you can still fit them because there's nothing to actually say you can't. And so I find them all very, very ambiguous. It's all just not right, all of it. These things aren't difficult to set in stone. It needs to be this percentage, that degree, whatever it needs to be written down, black and white, everybody knows. But we've got this, as usual, fudge. I think it's deliberate, if you're honest.
Yeah, what do you think, Richard? Because we kind of had this with Boiler Plus when it first launched, didn't it? And then there was, what is a smart control? The industry will decide what smart controls are. People fitting things that maybe they shouldn't, and maybe it's deliberate, but they could argue, and then they got a slap on the wrist. What do you think to the whole kind of where the industry's going with it all?
𝗵𝗲 sort of nailed it, really. It's just a mass of fog. Do you know what I mean? And You know, when you get an industry where a new boiler gets launched, yeah. So we've had, I'm not going to name because I can't be bothered anymore, to be honest. But we had a new boiler launch from a big manufacturer, come out, still the same kilowatt output on the low end, even though the Part L regulations, like Kimbo said, you know, are now stating that the actual appliance should meet the crop, you know, should satisfy the lowest load of the property, yeah. So none of these boilers do, yet they're still being launched into the market. No one's really talking about it. And I just find it so just very, very frustrating. I mean, yeah, you know, myself, Kimbo, a few of the other guys, Ryan Fitz, you know, Valiant. So, you know what I mean? They're decent boilers. If you stick with the decent brands and you listen to the guys who know what they're doing, and, you know, you stick with the boilers which have got the ultra low modulation sort of stuff, then as long as they got, you know, if it's system boiler, priority hot water or something like that, then you've got half a chance of getting it all right. But, you know, we kind of need to get to a point where the government or whoever it is, you know, stops legislating this stuff, and, you know, or chopping and changing it depending on what government's in what day. You know, we need it really taken out of the government and being legislated by an organisation that is a fixed organisation and holds people to account as well. I mean, ultimately, if stuff's going in wrong and it's not being set up correctly and this, that, and the other, no one's accountable. You know, the homeowner at the moment, if the difference between getting a boiler right and getting a boiler wrong could be 20% on someone's gas bill, but you know, the installer doing that, who's accountable? The installer should, you know, if they're going in and they're not setting this thing up right, they're not designing the system right, and then, you know, that boiler could have been more efficient. You know, someone needs to be accountable for that. So every future install from that point or that perspective ultimately is then done right, because, you know, the repercussions of that, you know, legislative, you know, and but, you know, while we are where we are, I can't even see, you know, Ryan don't want to fit heat pumps, gas boilers are prevalent still, hydrogen is a pipe dream. You know, I think if we really all sit down, I mean, we kind of stuck with natural gas for a little while, yeah, whether we like it or not, you know. And bear in mind, you know, I got a heat pump myself, everything else, I'm very pro heat pump, but ultimately these things are going to be here for a long time, so we need to bloody well make sure that they're gonna be the most efficient that they can be, you know.
Isn't that what benchmark is meant to be, though? Isn't that the accountability comes with, you have to fill in this form? Yeah, I know, but on paper,
it should be. Yeah, I mean, ultimately it should be, but, you know, you can fill in benchmark wrong, can't you? You know, you could lie. You know, who's being accountable for it? You know, no one checks the checkers. Do you know what I mean? So no one's accountable. Even with digital benchmark, you could still lie. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit like it's a bit like the old MOT centre, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You used to take your car in, and if it failed the emissions, they just put the probe up the car next to it. Do you know what I mean? To get you past. You know, that's the way it goes, isn't it? You know, and there's always a cheat for the system. And so, you know, until it's a lot more robust, or the boiler manufacturers step in and make it so it can't be anything else but robust, I don't think there's any hope for us, to be honest. You know, we really, really need some help on all of it, really. And the manufacturers have got to step up and do it. You know, that's the only way forward.
Yeah, that is the next question, actually. We'll go to Ryan for this one. Like, obviously, Part L's come in. We mentioned Boiler Plus, which is a few years old now, but there's always stuff coming in, especially for gas engineers, heating engineers. Is there anything that manufacturers can help you do, or are helping you do, to kind of make this process as easy as possible? You're on mute, Ryan.
The tricky thing you brought up there is Boiler Plus, Part L stuff doesn't matter in Scotland.
Yeah, very good point.
You know what I mean? This is a problem where Scotland's sometimes ahead of England, Wales stuff with things, but then sometimes England fires ahead, and that's just a pain in the backside, basically. Something manufacturers should be doing for me is making it a bit, like we say it all the time, making it a bit harder for people to actually just go in and buy a gas boiler. There should be, you know, obviously the gas card, everything should be shown, but then you should be stating where it's getting fitted and stuff for picking it up. You know, things like that should happen for me. It's too easy for guys to come in, pick up a boiler, sling it in a house, not fill in the benchmarks, not bother with the warranties, cash in hand, and we've all walked into them and seen them. And unfortunately, it is a lot more of your cheaper manufacturers out there who you find it's not that it's maybe a bad boiler, but they're obviously the ones on the really bad installs. And I think a wee bit more has to be done about people coming in and buying it. It has to be made a wee bit more difficult.
That's a weird one, Roy, because we don't see that many homeowners buy boilers off us, but it might be just the product market that, you know, we're in ourselves. I don't know, but you know, we don't see very much of that. We see a lot of installers, because obviously on our website, to even get the discounts that you know what I mean, that you get as installers, you've got to sign up and you've got to be gas safe registered if you're buying gas boilers.
Yeah, but what I mean, it's not necessarily just homeowners coming and buying. You've got guys in the trade going in, but you can spot them a mile away, and the merchant think, wouldn't have him working my house? You know, comes in a pair of joggers and something. You're like, you know.
I think the reality is that it's just installers still in the industry, isn't it? Still gas, you know. I mean, but it's no surprise really, because, you know, I was on my gas safe course. I did my resits, my 5-year resits a couple of weeks ago, and it's easy. It's just so easy to get through. It's just,
they want to pass you. They want to get you through it, and I get that. They shouldn't be thinking we want to be failing you, but then there's a point where it's like, no, this individual's out of their depth. You know,
there was one guy, right? Honest to God, there was one guy on the course, right, and he should not have been doing it. He should not have been on the course. And he was a qualified guy, and some of the stuff he was coming out with, and some of the mistakes he was making, it's just, you know. And while it's like that, and I mean, I always think the ACS thing is all wrong anyway. If you're a qualified guy, surely you've just got to go there and deem your competence. Do you know what I mean? You shouldn't have to go through all the basics. You know, and the assessors there should really be picking you up. Do you know what I mean? And should just be a refresher course. You know, this is what's happened in the industry. This is where we are. You know, just show us how to do a gas tightness test and commission on that appliance there, and, you know, that should be good enough. But, you know, the way they make it, and the structure of it, and the British standards that they make you claw through all the multiple guess questions, and you get it wrong 3 times and still pass. Do you know what I mean? So it's just, it doesn't test competence. Do you know what I mean? And exactly what you say, you know, when these guys are going around chucking boilers on walls, and they probably are qualified as well, you know, it doesn't help that, does it? You know, it doesn't want to make the industry better, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously getting your gas safe card now isn't, there's different standards of competency, isn't there? And when you transition more into these more complicated systems, or like you said, you want to design the system as good as possible, there's very different levels. And I've sat in with training with like Richard and 𝗵𝗿𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀 and stuff, and it's there's quite a lot going on, isn't there?
There's lots, and, you know, 𝗵𝗿𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀 knows, you know, when guys rock up on his course, that he can spot them within the first half hour or so, you know what I mean, of being on the course. He can spot you know, how they're interacting with it and how they're taking it away. You know, he can spot the good from the bad ones, you know. And
so 𝗵𝗿𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀, what happens to the bad ones? Do they just quit and you never see them again?
No, there's no. Put on the spot there, don't you? So it's, some people take less away from it than others, put it that way. I think everybody leaves with good intentions. I know occasionally, actually, people say, "No, bugger it, I'm never going to change about. I'm fitting an S-plan until I die," and that's fine. That's their prerogative to do that. But no, there's no pass or fail. This is 2 days of just come and absorb what you can. You know, we do as much as we can. There's a proper schedule, layout for it. Say some people lap it up, and other people sort of don't. But I mean, they come for the 2 days, and we give it the best we can. Everybody's different, aren't they?
Yeah. But you think obviously everyone that goes through it, because it's paid, they have to pay for it themselves, don't they? So they go out coming better than they came in.
I am really, really fortunate, unlike an ACS centre where nobody wants to be there and everybody begrudges pay.
Yeah.
To be there. I'm quite the opposite. You know, people could take, nearly everybody's self-employed. They've all taken a couple of days off work. Well, that's cost them. They've paid to come on the £100 a day, so that's cost them. They may have had hotels and food and all the other stuff. So, you know, I'm fortunate that everybody that wants, and that's a fantastic environment in itself. So there's no one surfing the pool under. They all want to be listening in and trying to grasp whatever's going on. And we have certainly on the second day, we have a peer-to-peer, you know, guys helping each other, which is really good. But well, I think it's really good anyway. But everybody's different. And I know some people, you know, I say to them, in touch, you get up. You know, I know what it's like on the first job. You're right in your comfort zone, and you're thinking, oh bloody hell, what if anything goes wrong? Just do an S plan. But you know, some guys will try and go the extra mile, and they need just. If I can, I'm more than happy to do that. Get loads of guys, you know, and once they've done the first job and the second, hear from them again. But then you see it up on Twitter and the like, and you look at the jobs, you think, wow, mate, yeah, got that right. And also the other thing I find, which is quite encouraging, is I get sent pictures of stuff. I mean, obviously I show pictures of sort of, you know, pretty outrageous things, and most of the pictures now come from the guys that have been on the course, and they'll send me pictures of blood. Just been in a job. Look at the size of the pump on this one, you know. And because they're beginning to understand what they're looking at, rather than just taking it on the chin. Oh, blimey, you know, perhaps it did need a 3-phase pump in this 4-bedroom house. And so that's quite encouraging as well. So no, there's no pass and fail, Mark. And like does it goes better armed than when they came. But it's very much what you can take away from it. Yeah.
Can I just interject there? Sorry, Kimbo. I was just going to say, one of the proudest moments of my life in the work in the office environment that I'm in was when the guys asked if they could borrow my notes from your course.
Wow.
And I was like, I've been waiting. I didn't want to push. I didn't want to be like, oh, look at all this stuff that I now know and how, you know, all that. But yeah, they were like, oh, you know, you've done this. Can we have a look? I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Should have
Good feeling.
Yeah, 20 quid. Yeah.
Yeah. I said, you can go on the course if you like.
Encouraging.
Yeah.
Well, it's
tax deductible. Yeah. No, it is encouraging. I think there's, you know what I mean? You get the right guys. I think there is the appetite there, but you know, I don't know how do we get the bottom end stuff up? I don't know how that works, you know, because there's got to be some sort of incentive to get that bottom end performing correctly. And everything at the moment is just wrong. You know, the system's geared wrong, the benchmark's geared wrong. Do you know what I mean? There's just so many wrongs. You know what I mean? It kind of makes you, kind of takes the mick out of the good guys, doesn't it? In the industry, do you know what I mean? You're you know, like when you're in a class, yeah, and you got, you know, you're in a class in school, and there's always 2 disruptive guys, and instead of those guys just being pulled to one side and saying you're rubbish and this, that, and the other, and take them out of the way, the whole class punished, yeah? And that's kind of how the industry is. The whole industry is punished because of the bad end of the industry. So like the ACS and the 5-year retest, that's all there because all the good guys who will fly through the course. I didn't even study up. I didn't look at a gas safe book or anything like that before the ACS, and I still cleared it. Do you know what I mean? And you know, that's not me showing off. That's just saying that it's not necessary. You know, what is necessary is to ensure standards and things are maintained. Do you know what I mean? But it's just like you know, you can't really excel up the top end because the bottom end just all drags you back down. Do you know what I mean? And while it's like that, you know, the industry is going to stay stagnant. You know, there's got to be incentives to improve. You know what I mean? There's got to be incentives to do heat pumps and renewables and move up that way. There's got to be incentives to do priority hot water. There's got to be incentives to get boilers running at optimum efficiencies, because why does the guy out there want to bother getting that boiler to 90% efficient when he gets paid the same money to leave it at 85% efficient? Do you know what I mean? And until that changes, we're gonna be in this environment where we're just going to be stuck. You know, we're just going to be stuck at this point.
But you're talking about installers,
you know what I mean?
being incentivized, not homeowners, because obviously boiler upgrade scheme, there's a lot of like push for end users to make energy efficiency improvements in their houses, but you would want more incentives for installers, like free training, like like I don't know, if you if you fit X amount of boilers, you get to go to Spain. If you can prove that you've done it to this sort of efficiency, then you will get some sort of government kickback or something. You
get an incentive. I mean, that's what happens in I think it's Germany, isn't it, Kimbo? That's how it happens there. You've got to prove that you've got that boiler to a certain percentage before you get your money for it. So, but you get incentivized money to get it to that percentage. Yeah, it doesn't happen here. We all work in the same environment. The guy out there that quotes $2,000 versus the guy with $3,000, what's going to happen is just the homeowner suffers, don't they, at the end of the day, because there's no incentive to get that up. Do you know what I mean?
I don't understand why we aren't copying other countries, though. I mean, Scotland are getting so many things right, I think, Ryan, you know. Yeah, they really are, you know. Interest-free loans for renewables, all these, and that they've been doing that for ages. Why don't we copy Germany? Why don't we copy what the Scandinavian countries doing? Why are we scared to go, let's just copy it? It's working, let's do it.
Yeah.
There are financial interests involved, and the companies that make the companies that are in control of the regulation won't let that happen. Yeah. And we don't have people in charge of the industry. We have people that are tied to the industry, in charge of the industry. So nothing happens unless the industry is happy with what's being suggested, and that's to get any further. That's why we've still got boilers coming out with a minimum modulation of 7 kilowatts when the average minus. Outrageous, but there's I don't know, there is no one to control it. There isn't anyone you can write to and say, hey, you're aware of what's going on, because no one has the authority to stop it. So these companies can do what they like.
That's what I said, you know, it needs to go further, doesn't it, Kimbo? There needs to be organisations set up that have no conflict of interest in the industry whatsoever, isn't it? You know,
on the board, nothing at all. They should be trade. It's controlled by the separate group of people from anyone in the trade. And so when they say, you know, you've got to have this by that date, you either do or you can't sell your car. And, you know, we all now have Euro 7 and Euro 8 cars, I think they're up to now, because someone up there in heaven says, well, if you don't get it to that standard, you can't sell them. Whereas you look at, if you go back 15 years to the first condensed combat, had a power output of 30 kilowatts and a minimum of 10. And in what 15 years we've managed to get now to an output of 30 and a minimum of 7. Whoop-de-dee, you know, no one's put any money into making things better. They just make them cheaper because they make more money out of them that way. And the private household is the person that suffers from it all. I mean, every new build has got these types of boilers in them, you know, and there's another 5 boilers today been signed off with boilers that are set at 80 degrees because that's what it says. And they're so oversized that they just modulate their entire lives. They switch on, switch off, switch on, switch off all the time.
So if we're not going to change it from the top, how can we create demand? Like I always maybe create demand, and you know, this awareness that we're getting. You know, we're getting ever so many people who are interested now. They want to know the details. They, you know, all of a sudden everyone's interested in heating. And heating as a system, and all, you know, making it as efficient as possible, this, that, and the other. So
is that what you're finding, Rhiannon? Because obviously energy prices gone up, cost of living gone up, everything's going up. Are you finding that your customers are now either researching more stuff online about energy efficiency, or are just more interested in their bill, essentially?
More interested in all of it. I mean, you know, we've got people coming down with just reams of calculations that they've done on running costs and what they, you know, have now. And yeah, they, you know, I had someone the other day who was like, I don't want you to design the system to 45 degrees and I want it to be at 35. You know, people are coming to you like that. And that's, you know, not the first phone call, but the second one, you know, they're not everybody, but
an increase.
Yeah.
What about you, Ryan? Have you found the same kind of thing?
Yeah, but everyone up here is just worried about their own pocket than anything else. They just want to make a quick saving on their bills, basically. You know?
It is a drive, though. Are you recommending anything that's been? Are they like really interested in controls, weather comp? Is there any kind of like specific products that they're like, oh, I really want this because I've seen that it will save me 10%. I really want TRVs because it's going to save me this.
Yes and no. I get a few people who will be like, oh, I want to get this because it's going to save me this. But sometimes it's like, well, realistically, that's not going to do anything for you. You know, they might say they want to change the stat to, I don't know, let's say they've just got a basic programmable stat and they want to put in a hive because they can control it with their mobile. I say, realistically, that's not going to do you much. You'll control it with your phone a couple of times and then you'll never touch it. So, you know, some people are thinking, do this, do that, but they're not interested in maybe changing their 40-year-old radiators. Because I've had this discussion with many people before. When you've got old Imperial radiators, 40-year-old, rooms are all decorated, they want to change it and say it's dual valves or whatever they've got. And you say, we'll have to lift the floors and you'll have to do a bit decorate. No, I don't bother. No. and that's it, you know. And you just think, all right, you know, can't win.
So
But,
everyone's after super easy wins, I suppose.
yeah, they want the one I'm getting at the moment. I get so many calls, people saying the house isn't. Oh, here we go. The future generations just walked in. Haven't seen them, Matthew. No, you go find mummy, okay? So this will be the 5th generation. I am the 4th.
That's GD Mills version, generation 3.
Good luck to him. I'm hoping he sticks in a football and earns $500,000 a week, so I can retire in a few years. But anyway, that's the 5th generation there. But yeah, get a lot of people just now saying, I got an emergency call out Friday, no heating, go out, all the TRVs turn to 1, room thermostats down at 14, the place isn't getting hot. Well, yeah, you know, this is the thing I'm up against. Everybody's wanting the same heat as before, but they want to pay. They don't want to be paying the extra. They want the same as last year's bill, and it's a bit of a losing battle at the moment, trying to get the message through to people as to what they might need to do or what they should do. It's an uphill battle, I'm finding.
What about you, Richard? Have you got like people buying more stuff? Are you recommending more stuff to kind of engineers and end users who are after exactly the sort of solution that Ryan's customers want?
We're flat out, mate. Like we've got, I think we've had our busiest year in upgraded thermostats, not Hive. Do you know what I mean? Because let's face it, you know, we've got 10-year-old thermostats out there, which were very good actually when they were designed. You know, if you look at the Honeywell CM927s or the early Drayton stuff, which were the TPI thermostats, if you go and swap out those thermostats with a Hive, you're not going to win. You're going to put something worse in your home than you had before. And you know, if you change from a class 4 thermostat to a class 1 thermostat, that's what you're going to get. But there are some really great thermostats out there. If you look at like the Drayton Wiser gear, that's all. If you've got an open therm boiler, it's class 5. If you haven't got an open therm boiler, so if you've got like an on-off clicky stat on your wall and you upgrade to it, it's still TPI ERP, which is class 4, which is an upgrade. You know, those controls. You know, it was when we did the tests at Salford, it was about 9%. So if you upgrade from a clicky stat to a TPI class 4 thermostat, it's 9%. If you can go to an open therm thermostat or your boiler's compatible that way, we're up into the double digits. You know, we're up to sort of 12 to 15%, which is amazing. You know, just changing a thermostat can do that if you get the right thermostat. But if you don't, then, you know, like Ryan said, you're fitting Hives out there. That's a bad move. That's a really
but
bad move.
you I'm sure everybody here's had it. It's like you've had Helen down the road's had British Gas in, and they've thrown in a Worcester and a Hive. And then that message gets about and they start telling their friends. You then go and price a job. Oh, I want a Hive because my friend's got it. I want a Hive. And you're like, you know, everything we do, Valent boilers, Valent controls. That's every time, Valent controls, that's what you're always pushing. Priority hot water, pushing everything. But they'll turn around and say, nah, what a Hive. You think, you just can't, it's so difficult sometimes to get through to them. You know?
They've just done such a good marketing job. The problem is that, you know, I mean, British Gas, full stop, do, I would say, risque marketing campaigns anyway, because, you know, I mean, if you're upgrading a condensing boiler from a condensing boiler, how are you ever going to save £1,000 on your energy bills a year? That's not going to happen. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, there needs to be some really good, and there is some really good consumer advice out there. You know, if you look at Joe at the Heating Hub, if you look at Nesta's website, things like that, there's some real good sources of valuable and good information that's so good. You know, it's gone on to Martin Lewis, it's gone onto the government website, you know, all these places. You know, it's really great that that's happened. But, you know, the word of mouth thing about some of these products without actual backup or testing or research, it's a very dangerous space to be in, you know, and especially if they're not listening to you as an installer with your advice. I mean, we as a business, we don't sell any thermostats that are below class 4 ERP. We don't sell on-off clicky stats. You have to have a baseline. Do you know what I mean? Ultimately, you know, the ambition should be, we always have a baseline, and it's the same with the boilers we sell as well. We have a minimum modulation ratio, so they've got to be under 5 kilowatts minimum modulation for us to sell them in our business, you know, and it's little step changes like that make the difference. Do you know what I mean? Because if you don't have that baseline, I mean, where do we go? You know, we just end up
But then, so if every merchant in the UK did that, then you would start to see efficiency drip through just because you couldn't get anything cheaper legally, I suppose.
Yeah, or a black market. It'd be like an online black market for cheap crap, wouldn't it? Do you know what I mean? It would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, there's got to be minimum standards. Like 𝗵𝗿𝘁𝗀𝗲 said, you know, in the car industry, there is a minimum standard. It's the Euro NCAP, you know, or Euro cap, whatever, cap 7, whatever they got to be. But there's a certain standard that those cars have got to be built to, and emission standards. We haven't got that. We haven't got minimum standards in our industry. And, you know, the second that does actually happen is that it comes out and you go, look, you know, these boilers now, they've got to be fitted to load compensation controls, full stop. They've got to have that. And if they've not got that, they can't even be signed off on benchmark. The second that happens, we'll get an efficiency improvement. You know, but at the moment, no, it doesn't apply to Scotland. While you've got the Part L thing, and it just says it can have weather compensation, or it can have a smart stat, or it can have flue gas heat recovery. And that's the biggest farce ever, because flue gas heat recovery only works in domestic hot water mode. So it doesn't even benefit the space heating, you know, but you can have a boiler with flue gas heat recovery, stick it on off controls, and it's compliant. And that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever, you know, and just needs to be brought up, doesn't it? And minimum standards need to be improved, and minimum modulations need to be set, you know, because if the government turn around tomorrow and say, right, all boiler manufacturers have got to have a minimum modulation of 3 kilowatts, or you can't sell them, that would happen overnight.
Yeah.
That would happen overnight. All the boiler manufacturers go, right, we've got to tweak these boilers, boys, get to work. And everyone out there, they go, right, you know, and ideal would be they're going, oh, you know, we've got a bit of a job to do here, haven't we? And, you know, 𝗵𝗲𝘁𝗶𝗴 would be there ripping their hair out trying to do it, and, you know, but it would happen, you know, is the point. Yeah. And without those minimum standards, boiler manufacturer can do what they want. I mean, tomorrow, if they wanted to, they could bring out a boiler with a minimum modulation to 20 kilowatts. Do you know what I mean? Because there's nothing to stop it. And that's the mad thing. So I don't know. Without that, we're kind of stuck, you know, without the manufacturers getting on board and giving us the controls and giving us the boilers that we want and things like that, or not that we want, what the industry needs, you know what I mean, to progress onwards, you know, that's not going to happen. But it's happening in heat pumps as well. If you just flip the coin onto heat pumps as well, how many small heat pumps are out there? There's not many, you know, most heat pumps are sort of out the box 6 kilowatts is the sort of smallest you can buy, but there's houses out there that would quite happily get away with a 3 kilowatt or a 4 kilowatt. And I appreciate there is an area of modulation with some of the inverter driven heat pumps, but ultimately they won't invert down as low as they could if they were smaller output to start with. So, you know, and then Ryan wouldn't have some of the problems he's got, you know, where you've got to accommodate for 1.25 inches through the property because, you know, potentially the house, you know, that heat pump might throw 7 or 8 or 9 kilowatts in on a day outside where it's 30 degrees, you know, because that's what you've got to account for with heat pumps, you know. And you know, it's kind of that, it's always that thing, you know, at the end of the day, we're missing the manufacturer legislation bit. If we get that, then, you know, things might progress. But while manufacturers can do what they want, we're going to be stuck here, I think, unfortunately.
How can we get that legislation then?
Oh, who do you write to? I've written to
Yeah, that's
everyone.
what I mean. Who, like, where do we go?
We don't think there is anywhere to go. Martin
You have to
Lewis,
go directly to manufacturers. No, that's not going to work. You have to go above them, don't you? So what, government, MP, all that stuff, or
and anyone above them that says they've got authority to do anything.
The problem is the organisations in our industry that are pretty much run by the manufacturers of the industry out there. You know, those are the people that government speak to. So, you know, there is. Do you know what I mean? there's always a conflict of interest. So it's always, you know, things won't progress on that way.
Yeah, we said this last time. The government, obviously, 𝗿𝗍s can't be experts. They're never going to be as experts as you guys are about fitting anything, boilers, solar, heat pumps, anything. So they liaise with government and government liaise with industry. And they're both kind of looking at each other to sort it out. It's the kind of message that we get quite a lot.
yeah. Is that sort of scenario where a company like Nesta, you know, with their sway and their ability to talk to us and to talk to government? Like, are they the kind of conduit for stuff like that?
Yeah,
yeah, and other trade organisations as well, like Ryan. I don't know if Ryan's part of 𝗵𝗲 and stuff like that in Scotland. They'll work a lot. We've got 𝗵𝗲𝘁𝗳𝗲𝗹𝗶, 𝗵𝗲 a lot, but yeah, they're they're more independent, because to Kimbo and Richard's point, they don't have anything to sell, whereas manufacturers always will.
Yeah.
Although obviously people like Drayton will do as much as they can to help. They're not legislated to do so.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult because, I mean, ultimately people want to sell stuff, but you know, I've always said this. There's always something to sell. Yeah, just because you know what I mean. You either don't have the technical ability inside the manufacturing organisation or whatever it is. There's always somewhere to go. There's always somewhere better to go. You know what I mean? But it's the demand ultimately. If we create the demand, then it will sort itself out. If there's no demand for it and installers just carry on chucking boilers on walls, and because ultimately an installer wants to fit the easiest thing, yeah. So in some scenarios, that's not necessarily always their fault, that they'll go and choose the easiest appliance on the market to throw on the wall. It's not their fault, but the manufacturers should have, you know, a due care to actually make sure that even though they're throwing that appliance on the wall, that it's always at its most efficient, you know. But they don't, because you can choose the components, can't you? And that's the problem, is that you can choose the boiler, you can choose the controls, there's nothing that marries them all together in a legislation kind of perspective, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Rhiannon, I will touch base, because last time we spoke, you said there was a big call for solar you were seeing as well, because of kind of energy crisis, cost of living crisis, and maybe people want to feel like they're more energy independent. Is that something that you've seen carry on?
Yeah, that's absolutely still going. I feel like I've got two parts of my brain, one for heat pumps, one for solar, and the solar side is winning at the moment. I've got loads of concerns about what other people are doing, to be honest. I hear all sorts of horror stories about installs that are going in without contacting your DNO, people not doing the proper paperwork. And I've had quite a few conversations about my concerns. I don't know where I stand. You know, I don't know what you're supposed to do regarding that. I don't know any companies specifically. It's just from sort of customers who've sort of come to us and said, I've had another quote. They said I could have this many panels, and I'm saying you couldn't even possibly have that many panels, because you've got single phase, blah blah blah, this, that, and the other, without having some sort of contact with your DNO, and there's all sorts of worries about that. But I'm getting a lot more heat pump plus solar. The whole people are just going for it, you know. If they've got the capital to invest, they are just going, I want to be generating as much as I can, and I want to make it as the use of it as efficient as I can. And that's what I mean about people sort of taking a bit more ownership of it all, really.
Yeah.
But then you're kind of solar it's still kind of a relatively small growing market, emerging market, same as heat pumps when you compare it to like 1.7 million boilers a year. And you've already seen kind of solar slinging where it's going on and it's not.
Yeah.
Right. Have you seen the same with heat pumps? Is that a concern for you as well?
I haven't seen that so much, I don't think. Again, probably because there still aren't that many people down here doing it. And
no, we get them on the group chats, Rhiannon. It's yeah. I mean, there's some terrible heat pumps being installed at the moment, and even to a DI. I mean, I won the other day. I mean, 𝗵𝗲𝘁𝗶𝗴𝗴 copied me in on it, and it was they bought a heat pump, a cheap one. It was about £1,000 online, and just DIY'd it. And these pipes off the heat pump literally ran across the ground outside, insulated, and then into the property. I mean, it's one of the worst I've seen as well. But you know, it's bound to happen, isn't it? You know, it's you know, there's gonna, you know, it's not just our industry that gets combi boilers slung. You know, heat pumps are going to be slung. You know, because we just don't have the numbers to get them all right. Do you know what I mean? You're gonna get Dave and his mate, who's a builder's mate, and he's going to be throwing a heat pump in. That's a fact. You know, because there's just not enough installers out there to do the work. You know,
is another issue as well. I think the beginning of the end was when anybody could certify that the job was right, because nobody checks it. And if you look at the 92% efficiency that the old Part L went, how many percentage of combi boiler or any condensing boilers ever fitted at anywhere near 92%?
They're not.
Yeah. And so the same's going to happen with heat pumps. it's supposed to be this. Well, we'll just bang it in and everything's getting hot. That'll do. You know, and when the bills come in and it's not right, where's that all going to? You know,
we talked about that, about the monitoring and stuff like that of the systems and how important that is. But who's going to do it?
Do it.
Yeah. It's time and effort, isn't it? You know, it's that extra bit, you know, and I mean, you know, all kudos to some of the guys on Twitter, because they on their heat pump system, some of the geeks out there are really taking it to town, you know, and that's great. But if you can't sit there for hours data monitoring, you know, every little bit about the system, which no one's paid to do, you know what I mean? If you're putting a heat pump in, are you really quoting then for a year's worth of data monitoring and getting that system tweaked optimal? You know, it's not going to
No,
happen.
people are doing that for a hobby, aren't they? That's the thing. Like your average consumer
That's the only
won't.
way you can ever do it, because I mean, you know, if you look at some of the stuff I've done, you know, you couldn't afford to ever have any of that stuff done yourself, because it would just cost you so much money. You know, that the reality is, if you're doing it yourself, it's great, isn't it? You know, if you've got the technical capability and you can do it yourself, you can put thousands of hours into it and get something really good out of it. But you know, when we've got 600,000 heat pumps to install a year, and we've already haven't got the installer base for it, you know, as nice as it is to give the care and attention on all these jobs, when the jobs start piling up, that's going to go by the wayside a little bit. And you know, let's face it, a 600% heat pump efficiency, which Heat Geek was showing off the other day, that's not going to happen in the bulk of installations, just because there's not that time or effort, or you know, there's not the money in the job, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
Because those guys, you know, might not be able to upgrade all their radiators or afford to do that. They've just about afforded to do the heat pump on the bus grant. They're not going to then spend another grand or two on radiator upgrades. Do you know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. It's not being anything, you know, down putting on it. It's just the way the industry is and the way people are. You know, it's always that thing. You can try and teach them and try and say, look, you know, if we upgrade your rads, you'll get things more efficient. But you know, we've tried that on gas boilers. You know, lots of people try that on gas boilers all the time. But, you know, still there's 50, like Ryan said, there's still 50-year-old rads in. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know. It's just finding that if it was all legislated, it would all happen, wouldn't it? If it was legislated that everything has to run at 45 degrees Celsius, heat pumps have to go in this way, they have to achieve a minimum COP, or they can't be commissioned. Do you know what I mean? You'd have to design it. You'd have to get it right. The same as gas boilers. You know, we always talk about heat pumps being efficient, but gas boilers can be efficient as well. But, you know, it's just spending that extra money, getting the lower temperatures, et cetera, that you have to do to get them there, isn't it? You know, but while we're not doing, you know, while there's
new builds is where they need to get it.
Sorry, mate.
Hammer in the new builds. It's the new builds. And so where I am, I think it was what's the word I'm looking for? Had the highest growth of new builds, I think, in the whole of the UK, in the area I'm in, certainly the last few years. They're throwing them up at a hell of a rate. Everyone I go into, you've got your classic wee logic on the wall, dials turn maximum, hot water's absolutely burning. A lot of the time they're not even wired up properly. And yeah, everything's getting signed off, you know, and it's the new builds are the ones I think they should really, because that would be easy to control.
Yeah.
You know, it's very difficult to control the ones where someone like myself's going to the merchants buying a boiler and fitting it on the high street. They're ones that are difficult for the government, but new builds should be getting hammered.
Yeah, and that should have been happening ages ago.
Oh, it should have been happening a long time ago. And it's still, you know, they're still throwing gas boilers in them as well, which cracks me up.
Be criminal.
Well, they're just not suitable. I mean, if you look at them, gas boilers are just not suitable for the heating for the new build heating market. They're just not suitable. Full stop. You know, a lot of these properties are in the sort of 2-3 kilowatt bracket at -3. Do you know what I mean? So when it's like +10 outside, these things are not, you know, they're not losing anything. You know, they're losing watts. You could probably heat it just having all the light bulbs on. You know, or it's crazy, isn't it? You know, we're in this situation. I don't know. I you know, it sounds down, doesn't it? Because there's a load of great things happening in the industry as well. But ultimately, you know, to get on top of all this, we you know, the government have got to step in.
Unfortunately,
really,
it's people at the top in the right places just getting a bit of that, and that's all it is. And you've got Mr. Such and Such building so many houses across the whole of the UK.
Yeah.
Well, I want to build these houses. If I build these houses, you're getting your money, and then he's getting it. So that's all they're in. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You know.
But you
We
can
don't care
create.
what.
You could create a green economy, like you said, because like Richard said, if they
do
said
it
every
overnight.
house has to have solar, then you'd have loads more solar installers who are doing it properly, because if you're doing a new build, it can easily be policed. Then that, spirals down. So it's
Well,
doable.
as far as I was aware, like a filter, British standard, no new builds have got them. Apparently, they don't have to bother. You know, there's so many loopholes for new builds that they can just squirm through things. You know.
And it's creating that demand as well.
How many systems have we been out to? And it's like iron brew running through the heating system. It's a year old. You know, the quality is just shocking. You know, they just.
It'd probably be all right. I haven't tested iron brew, mate, but you know, it'd probably be all right.
Yeah, what pH level?
If you're desperate,
It's probably
you'll
better than
figure
half
it
the
out.
inhibitors, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
It's literally what they look like, iron brew. You know,
Yeah, the
all this
VDI in
speciality here.
Germany, it's all done with iron brew.
I reckon.
Well, they've got something right over there.
Right, we're kind of round off of the session, so we're kind of at the end of the year. We've done a couple of these, and there is plenty of positive stuff as well. So obviously we're getting to the end of the year. You guys are saying you've been flat out all year. You're looking forward to Christmas. So what do you think 2023 is going to hold for your business? Are you going to plan to fit more things? Are you seeing more trends? We'll kind of go round. We'll start with Rhiannon. What are your kind of business plans for 2023?
Business plans. Just get a little bit more efficient at things. A little bit more of the paperwork needs to get. There's ever so much paperwork that people just don't even realise before and after. We need to just streamline that a little bit. I think we've had a tendency, because solar has been so busy, to really concentrate on that. But I think with the, in the area that we are geographically, I really think heat pumps are just, we can't drop them. It's going to be so important with the pushes that we're seeing. The bus scheme is still here. So I hope that, word of mouth and people's interest and environmentally and all those different factors will mean that can kind of grow a little bit. I think that would be really good, instead of having 75 solar, 25% heat pumps. I'd like to see that sort of even out a little bit, and more of doing, solar and heat pump in the same property, if they can.
And then I suppose you'd like to see the bus continue in some sort of guise as well, so that it is still offering that homeowner kind of support.
Definitely.
Perfect. 𝗀𝗿𝗁, what's your
worry?
Oh, sorry, carry on.
I was just saying, without that, I would worry about the whole, getting our 600,000 heat pumps in. It's a fine line as it is, I think.
And that's not guaranteed, obviously, because there's been a new chancellor. But obviously, the chancellor that is now the prime minister, so you kind of hope, don't you? But we'll see. 𝗀𝗿𝗁, what are your kind of thoughts, plans for 2023?
Well, I'm fortunate as I'm retired. Really, I only work a couple of days a week. My real fear, and it's not really for me, it's just generally, is that the new ACS centre are these big centres now that are offering to do 40,000 heat pump certifications a year, and that it's already to tick boxing just like the ACS, and guys are coming out certified, approved and all the rest of it, and still bloody clueless as to flow and all the rest of it, all the basics that you need to be able to put a good system together. I'm just concerned that a lot of those people, even when they go and do their first, and realise that they don't actually know enough. And we've all been there, haven't we? You go to a job, and I've just passed this ACS test. I remember my first commercial catering. I went to my first restaurant and I had no idea what I was even looking at. And yet there I was, certified to do it. Of course, there's nowhere to go and learn things, so the customer pays whilst you learn on his kit. And that's not the scenario we want with heat pumps, sure. And so I'm just concerned that people that might genuinely want to get better at what they do heat pump wise are going to go down the wrong route to get information, because there's very little information on what you need to know about designing a system on these heat pump courses. So that's my thing. I mean, I'm laughing. I only need like a few people a week, and I'm back in business. But it's just a shame that it's starting to happen already in the heat pump market. And low temperatures. I mean, some of those courses, they are absolutely dreadful. Well, I went on, the bloke was just reading it off the PowerPoint. He'd done the same course about before and then was teaching it a month afterwards. He's a guy that's been working with years. All the ACS are panicking now that they can't make loads of money out of all this, gas. They're all trying to get in on, anything they can pound. So, But so I'm just going to carry on, hope for the best.
Yeah, so we all need Kimbo to work a few more days a week, I think, for all of this to come together. That's good. Richard, what are your plans, trends that you're kind of seeing for next year?
So next year we'll have our own training centre up and running. So
is that in Mid Wales?
Yeah, in Mid Wales. So we're gonna. So it's not going to be big. It's not going to be big. So I don't want it to be, but it'll be very specialised training. Just trying to get the guys up to the next standard. So once they've come off Kimbo's course, they can come here, and we can get the bar raised that much more. And by the end of it, hopefully, you're never going to fit an Ideal Logic or a 𝗵𝗁𝗁𝗁 again. You know, that's kind of where we want it to be. So, you know, it sounds harsh, but ultimately, you know, that's where we need to be, and that's where our thinking needs to be. So, you know, and that's where I need to be, because I was thinking of going ahead in the future, you know what I mean, and doing heat pumps and this, that, and the other, and because I know all that side really well as well. But ultimately, we've got to take a step back and actually take ownership of what we've been doing for the last 20 years, because it still isn't right. Do you know what I mean? So that's where I'm going. You know, I'm sort of going back to the future, if you know what I mean. So
or the here and now, I suppose, rather than
because I mean, you know, we can all be visionaries and we can all think of the future and everywhere we want to be. But ultimately, I think some of the best visionaries out there actually work on the here and now and try and make what we've got good. You know, and that's where I want to be. So yeah, doing that, just reinforcing the shops, making sure we got all the components on the shops that, you know, all the installers want and need to make these systems more efficient, and working from there, mate, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it at the show. There's loads of innovation in the industry, which is, to end on a more positive note, there's loads of stuff that you can fit here and now, like the kind of baby steps that will make systems way more efficient, make everyone's bills lower, less carbon monoxide, all that sort of stuff. It's just about getting them in people's homes, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's where we are, you know, and then, I mean, that's where, you know, I had one guy today trying to end on a positive, because ultimately it's really important to do that, right? But I had one guy today ring me off Kimbo's course, and he started by saying, well, I got 3.2 kilowatts, and if I divide that by 21 and then times it by 3,600, that gives me 600 litres per hour, he goes to me. And I said, well, that's bloody good, mate, because you don't normally start a conversation like that. But this guy had been on Kimbo's course, learnt about flow, and then he was trying to get the right products off us to implement what he'd learned. So, which
is easier for you as well, I suppose, as the supplier. Is easier.
Brilliant, because if they come in talking my language straight away, we're on a winner, you know, and that's really positive, and that's what Kimbo's brought to the industry, and what I want to try and carry on. You know what I mean? And you know, if we as installers, if you can go into a merchant and you can speak to a merchant on that level, that's how things improve. Do you know what I mean? And that's not going to happen across all merchants, but you know, there's one or two, you know, there's one or two merchants out there that might have that capability. But if you've got installers speaking to you on that level, then you know, that's what I'm positive about. You know, if we can have those intelligent conversations about system design and this, that, and the other, it can only go one way then. So that's where we're going to be. So.
What about you, Ryan? What have you got any key plans for next year?
Not necessarily. I would say we're fortunate. We've always been busy. Always. 2020 was exceptional, really. COVID, everyone got the holiday money back and stuff. It was bonkers. This year as well has also been really busy. It maybe dipped slightly over the summer, obviously because everyone was in going on the holidays and stuff. But I'm just, obviously my dad's basically retirement, so next year we'll probably have to look to take somebody on, but good luck to the person, because I think I'd be a pernickety horrible person to work for. But
you don't reckon you'd be a good boss?
I think I'd be a good boy.
I think you'd be a good boss.
Pain in the arse, but I think I'd be very fair. But we'll see. That's something I have to do. But first of all, I think there's going to be probably a financial crash. There'll be a lot of job losses. It's going that way. I think I'm sure we'll be all right during that, but obviously see what's going to happen. But the prices of everything has just been rocketing, and we all know it's going one way. Everything's going to just go flat. So obviously next year could be a tough one for a few people, but you know, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, brilliant. I think we should do one of these when you've hired someone and had them on for a couple of months. But we'll do it with them instead.
Yeah.
I'll probably have a lot less hair.
Yeah, a lot grayer.
Yeah. I'm going that way. You can't see it just now, but yeah, I think I'd be a fair boss. Fine to work for, but I just think I'd be pernickety. You can imagine that some people it's not a bad thing to be pernickety, but there are a lot of people who wouldn't want to work for someone like that.
I'm looking forward to it. I think we'll end up there then. So yeah, thank you everyone for your time today, and we'll kind of finish there. Thank you all. Cheers, guys.